Hello, friends. Sorry for the delay. We had no idea that there were daylight savings in America. So for us, this was happening in like 40 minutes from now. But we're here. We managed to jump in on time. Thank you for joining. Let us know where in the world are you. I think most of you are in America. So yeah, just drop it in the chat. We're very excited about this conversation. Long Island, New York, Rebecca, North Carolina, so Mexico. So yeah, most of you are in that side of the world. As you know, or maybe you don't know, I'm in Dubai. I'm crazy, and I've decided to leave Dubai because of the situation, obviously. So I'm actually, if all things go well, I'll fly back to Europe next weekend,
Oh,
and
yay.
hopefully there won't be any issues. So can you hear me and can you see me?
I can see you. Yay. Okay.
Beautiful.
You can't hear yourself anymore then?
I can't hear
Jeez
myself
Louise.
anymore. Amazing,
Today,
amazing.
Mercury in retrograde hates me.
It's been intense these days. Hey,
Fucking get in
Jackie,
a
so
car
good to see you.
accident. Now my headphones don't want to work. Let's do this. Who's
You
ready
get in
to
a car
talk about?
accident. I'm in the middle of a war, so like, what the hell is going on?
I think we need to
Eh,
reconsider a lot of things, a
Life
lot
is
of life
crazy these days.
choices. I
But
don't know about you,
anyways,
but I'm
so
being asked to slow the F down. So I'm going to listen, I guess.
always listen to your inner guidance, right? That's something we've learned. So, the Garden of Eden, we're really excited about this conversation. I don't know about you, but Genesis is my favorite book in the Bible. Well, you know that, Jessie. And so I'm excited to like decode it with you guys here live. As you know, this is recorded. This is going to be uploaded into YouTube and into our podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And you are invited to participate, ask questions. Like that's why we're having these live conversations. We always start our podcasts with a little drop in that is always guided by Jessie. So, Jessie, if you want to start with that and then we can jump into the conversation.
Yeah, so let's take a moment here to just settle into the body. So if it feels comfortable, I invite you to just gently close your eyes today. Let your shoulders drop, let the body soften, taking a slow breath in through the nose and a long breath out through the mouth. And again, slowly inhale and exhale. Now bring your awareness into the center of your chest, not the physical heart, but the space behind it, the quiet place inside you that remembers something ancient, the part of you that came here already connected to Source, to God, before doctrine, before shame, before the story that said you were separate. Let's just take a moment here to breathe into that place of divine union, connection, and imagine what it might have felt like standing in the garden to exist in a world where nothing was divided yet, where the human and the divine were not two things, just presence, just breath, just awareness. Let's take one more slow breath in here. And an exhale, feeling your body back in the chair, feeling your feet on the ground, the room around you. And when you're ready, opening your eyes, and let's get into this beautiful exploration of Genesis, Juan's favorite.
Love it. My favorite. You love it as well, right? Don't you?
I
I
love the
think yours
Garden of
is
Eden.
Revelation, but yeah, like Genesis. I think for me, Genesis is probably one of the most mystical books in the whole Bible. It's the one that allows you to really deep dive and like get lost in the decoding because there's so many, yeah, so many layers, so much symbolism that you can like extract from Genesis 1 to what's like Genesis. How many books are there in or chapters? Like 50
I don't know
or
offhand a lot, though.
yeah,
Somebody
yeah,
knows in the chat. Somebody's got to
yeah.
know.
I'm pretty sure somebody knows. But also, it's like it's got multiple authors, which is also very interesting. Like
Yes.
for most of the books in the Bible are written by one single author, but this one is written by multiple authors. And what's even more interesting, yeah, Yolanda said 50.
50.
And what's even more interesting is that a lot of the times these authors contradict each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting
Like,
because that was my first, was reading like Genesis 1 to 3. And you get to like
uh,
chapter 2, verse 4, and there's like this significant tone shift that you must be really not paying attention if you don't see it. And I remember reading and being like, what the fuck just happened here? Like, and then I looked into it and I was like, "Oh, it's completely different author. And they just like mishmash this together and hope that you wouldn't notice. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. From what I understand, Genesis 2 precedes Genesis 1 in terms of like
It does.
the chronological order that it was written. And apparently, the author that wrote Genesis 1 was kind of trying to fix what the author in Genesis 2, which again came like was written earlier than that,
Yeah. And it's
kind of like
interesting
screwed up,
because
right?
that second two, like 2.42, verse 4, I think is where it starts to be the first author, actually. It's interesting because, like, that's a very, you're separate from God there. You know what I mean? Like, there's a very distinct separation. And then the first chapter is like so this beautiful divine connection and is like cosmology and it's just so beautiful. So it's interesting because even in the flow of how it was written, somebody had to feel separate first before somebody looked at those words and was like, "Wait a second, that doesn't feel right. We're connected." So, yeah, it's interesting. It's like you have
It's
to
a good
feel
thing.
separate first.
Exactly. And what we want to share with you guys today, and always like this is just what Jesse and I can interpret from what we read. And you can always take what resonates and leave what doesn't. We're by no means like scholars or experts. We're just two human beings that are curious and we like to share what we discover with you guys. But what we're going to be focusing on, obviously, is the Garden of Eden, Genesis 3 to 7. And what you mentioned here, like someone needed to see the division first. That's, in my opinion, that's exactly what the story of Genesis is about. It's like the 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 way in which, for the first time, consciousness splits itself to experience itself, and that's something that I believe that we're all experiencing. Like, I believe that consciousness, God, is experiencing itself through us, through our bodies as vessels, so that we can understand what life is really about. Otherwise, there would be nothing to experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way that like the whole creation starts, in my opinion, it's not really about matter. A lot of people will take these passages from Genesis and take them like literally, as you know, it's about matter being created. But I truly believe and I feel that it's more about awareness, right? Because Genesis begins with light before the sun exists, right? Which means that consciousness existed before physical reality. And then God speak, let there light, there be light. And that's kind of like the first sight of awareness.
Yeah, it's very true. I definitely think it's about awareness as well.
So Frida's asking, can you set the references you're quoting in the chat or somewhere where we can follow up for more reading later? Yeah, we can probably, once we are done with the live recording, we can just cite all the references that we're giving here, because right now we don't have them with us, which is like letting the streams of consciousness flow and just sharing with you guys.
Yeah. And also, like, for what we're referencing right now and the books and the different authors, I feel like there's many different scholars that have talked about it. If you Googled it, you could find many different sources.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's
yeah. I actually,
names, different names of the books. I've never looked that deeply into it.
yeah, I talked about this scholar the other time we did a live episode, which is, I always forget his last name, but he is the host. His name is Dan, and he's the host of the
McClellan or
podcast
something?
called Dan McClellan. Yes, and he's the host of the podcast Data versus Dogma. And there is an episode he does about. No, actually, it's not. I'm not sure if it's in his podcast, but he was interviewed by someone else, by Monty Martyr. You probably know Monty Martyr. She's like huge in like the political ex-Christian nationalism deconstruction space.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
She
yeah.
interviewed, her podcast is called Flipping Tables, and she interviewed him about Genesis. Like, well, they talked about a lot of things, but they talk about Genesis, and that's where I heard for the first time that the authors of Genesis 1 and 2 were different, and that they were written in like very different times.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting. We'll definitely share all of that in the show notes and when we re-upload everything. Um, Okay, so this whole conversation really started because we've been told for so long, that the Garden of Eden was this physical place from where humanity fell because of their wickedness, because we're sinners. We became sinners since that very moment in time. But what we are trying to explore here is, what if Eden is really not a place? What if it's always been a state of consciousness? I don't know about you, but it resonates way so much more to believe that that's a state of consciousness that we can actually access anytime, rather than thinking that it's a place that once existed and that we can never go back to it, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when you start to of it that way, it's basically saying that the Garden of Eden is your ability to bring heaven to earth.
Yeah,
Peter
yeah.
saying Eden, like heaven and hell, are a state of consciousness. Quantum physicists now tell us that nothing is local. Yes. Yeah.
T. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's so interesting because when we talk about that, anytime I share something about heaven or hell or Eden being states of consciousness, people are really triggered. Like they
Mm,
have attached, they feel this as a personal attack because they have attached their identity to beliefs that are actually not their own beliefs, or they've been told this so many times that it just became like something they believe in, but they haven't really
yeah.
taken, I guess, the time to research, to question, to try to understand with their own understanding and form their own beliefs, that they feel like an attack about it. Yeah, everything is a state of consciousness. As Freda is saying, everything is perceived by us.
Hmm.
Everybody evolves at their own pace. Exactly, exactly. And also, if you think about it from a metaphysical interpretation, Eden represents unity consciousness, right? The moment that we were not aware of any separation, there was not non-dual, there was no duality. We lived in a non-duality state with the divine, with God,
Hmm.
with everything, right? And that's why, and that's really our original state of creation,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
I find this so fascinating because I'm sitting here and what's like running through my brain is like the Gnostic text because it's such a beautiful representation of the complete polarity of it. Like you have the Garden of Eden where it is like this unity consciousness, and then you start to like notice that you are a being outside of that, and then you separate from God, and then you have the Gnostic version of it where the Garden of Eden is a whole effing illusion. It's actually the Matrix, and you're now meant to wake up from it. And the serpent's now Sophia. And now you're remembering that you're actually one with God and you're pulling yourself back into non-duality. So it's so interesting to me how like they're literally complete opposites, but like they're both true in a sense. Do you know what I mean? Like it's always like yes and I just find it so
Mm,
fascinating that you have these two spectrums, but like I can see why it's unity consciousness. And I can see why when we start to question ourselves and like pull like have the devil of needing proof and all these things and pull ourselves out of unity with the divine, that we end up, the way the Bible ended up a few chapters later. And then I can also see how it's actually a representation of the Matrix, of realizing, holy shit, I thought my life was like rainbows and unicorns and it actually effing sucks. Like, not to, it's not that it sucks, but you know what I mean? And it's so interesting to see
yeah.
how it's like the complete opposite, but like both are true simultaneously, you know?
According to quantum physics, yeah, everything is true in the quantum field. Everything is a possibility. And your observation, as Freda was saying, what you perceive, your perception of something creates that reality, right? Which is so interesting because I feel like we're in such an amazing time where we have so many great scientific advancements. We have been able to prove so many things that probably the authors of these books were trying to explain somehow, but
Hmm.
you wouldn't be able to like tell someone, I don't know how long ago were these books written?
Like
I
how
don't
long
know,
were
but like thousands
Genesis?
of years.
Thousands
Yeah,
of
actually,
years,
I'm gonna,
yes.
right? If you would have told someone who lived thousands of years, like the any concept like non-locality,
Mm,
it would have been impossible for them to understand. So I really feel that they create these beautiful stories because they're like beautiful because they're poetry, you know? They're full of symbolism of like the way that they are told are beautiful. And in my opinion, they were written to try to explain what was so hard to explain back then. But nowadays we have like science. We have
yeah.
also like the philosophy, the way that we understand life has also evolved so much that we have all these different ways of explaining things that back then you could only explain through a story.
It's interesting because now we have so many more ways of explaining things. And I feel like there's also so much more misinterpretation and there's so much more like duality. because everyone thinks they're right. And I'm going to use what Frida said in the comment there as an example, because she said that what we're calling G slash or D, like God, is that field, that quantum field, she suspects. But the whole point is that the language never freaking mattered. Like my daughter telling me, my daughter, my oldest, I've got 3 and a son, but my oldest, who's 13, the other, like maybe 3 or 4 months ago, being like, Mom, who decided these words were going to go in this dictionary and like put all these words in here? And I'm like, that's a really good point. We've literally inherited our entire meaning from someone else's meaning. And it really made me realize that words never mattered. And we're so focused on like becoming the word as, or like the word made flesh as this like book, like the word in the Bible is the be all end all. But like God, field, quantum, like I call it Christ consciousness. You can call it the field. I call it the I am. I use God, and none of those are triggering for me, because I think that we're all just trying to use our different lenses to explain the exact same experience, which can't actually be described in language. It is a felt sense. And so it's interesting, because I think that we get stuck on language quite a bit when like we're all just saying the same thing in very slightly different ways and then fighting over it. So now that we have all these ways to explain the thing, I feel like there definitely is more separation, more duality, because you're like, no, my word that I'm using is the right word because I'm triggered by your word. And really the word never effing mattered, because the field,
Yeah.
God, Christ consciousness existed before language.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, what if really it's just a state of consciousness, right? And we have the capacity, as Frida was saying, like, to come back into that state of unity consciousness. But then we're being pulled in so many different directions by society, the media, to remain in that sinful state of, and to me, sin is just being illusion of separation, but forgetting your oneness with God and your oneness with everything else. Every time I read scripture, I feel it's more of like the way that you feel when you read it rather than the way that you understand it. Because if you stay in the understanding, you stay like here in the mind. And I always believe that the body has like holds all the answers, and the body is like
It's a tool.
your
Yeah.
true connection to the divine,
Yeah.
right?
Definitely. And I also feel like you can pick up the Bible and find, like, depending on your current state of your current emotional state, you could find different meaning in scripture. I feel like every time I go and I pick up the Bible and read something, I'll be like, oh, there's this other layer. Like for me, it was I'll use Paul because everyone hates Paul. And like the one about submitting to your husband or whatever, I forget the exact words, but I understand what it means on the literal. I understand why it's being distorted. And then I sit there and I'm like, actually, that's like the feminine me in me bowing to the masculine in me and having this divine connection, this divine union within myself. And then on that third layer being like, oh, wait a second. Like a month later, I'm like, holy shit, it's actually also once I'm in union, the divine in me being able to bow to the divine in someone else, that my sovereignty, offering sovereignty to someone else that maybe hasn't felt it before. And then I'm like, damn, there's like so many layers. We get a lot of times, especially with somebody like Paul the Apostle, where like it's a triggering thing for people to wake up, because the entire Christianity has been created around this person that I think was unraveling, like had the vision of Yeshua was completely unraveling, all of his identity just like being pulled apart. And he's still using language that he would typically use to try and describe these things, right? But it's just so interesting because like a verse that's so distorted, if you sit with it, it actually can mean so many different things. And there's like, in my opinion, that man was talking about the field many times in his work, in between shit that
Yeah.
sounded a little fucked up.
Yeah, no. And honestly, like I've, I've been reading The Girl Who Baptized Herself by Megan Watterson. And like the main Gnostic text she's using there is, and I know we're like going on a tangent right now because this is about the Garden of Eden, but that's what we always do, Jesse and I. And the main story, like the main Gnostic text, the whole book focuses on is the acts of Paul and Thecla, right? And the way that she interprets it makes it seem that what if also like Paul's teachings have been misunderstood, or misinterpreted, right? Like, what if they've been mistranslated, right? So, because they paint Paul in a very different way than what I used to believe. Like, I used to believe that, Paul was just basically he created his own version of Christianity and distorting
Hmm.
Yeshua's message. But in this book, she gives us like a different approach, which is also why it's very important that, whenever you hear anyone saying anything about these things, like you do your own research and you have your own discernment, right? Because the truth is that we don't know anything for real,
Yeah. Yeah. Frida's saying Peter
right?
even mentions that Paul of Tarsus was hard to understand even back then. I find like
Imagine that.
Peter being the version of us that has a very hard time not having proof, like he's very much up here and like then bringing it into the body is a harder act for him because I feel like he's always questioning everything. So it's just interesting.
And speaking of questioning, let's go back to Genesis. Let's talk
Yes.
about the tree of knowledge, right? The
Mm.
tree of knowledge that tells us what's good and what's evil, and it's
Mm.
the birth of duality, right?
Yeah. It's the birth. I've never really sat with that because I think I was like that understanding that I like the Gnostic understanding more. I understand that it's like unity consciousness as well, but I've always liked the Gnostic version a little bit better. But when you sit with it and you think about the tree of knowledge being like, it is the moment. It's interesting because my work is so centered on non-duality and people get really
Yeah.
triggered when I'm like, everything is neutral. And they're like even the video that I posted about my accident being like this neutral event and I got to keep it neutral. And somebody, like some of the people were like, well, what would happen if your son was hurt? My son actually was hurt. He wasn't hurt as badly, but anyways, like we went through the motions. I stayed neutral regardless. But it's so interesting because when you think of it that way, the tree being this moment where we were like,
Mm,
actually, it has to be good and evil. Actually, I'm gonna get triggered. Like it's almost
yeah.
like the birth of the trigger.
Right? If we think about what neutral is, or the way that I perceive it. So right now I think of something neutral and I think of like balance, right? And if you think about the Garden of Eden was a place of balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where
Yeah.
there was no more or no less than anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
You lived in that state, or they lived in that state of complete harmony, of balance, of delight, until they fall into duality, eating from the tree of knowledge, where they first saw or understood what was good or evil, what was right or wrong. And also when they experienced themselves as a self versus another self. So it was like
Yeah.
the awakening of this whole perception of dualism.
Frida's saying, I don't know if you want to pin this one, but good and evil are perceptions. Perceptions are different from knowledge or knowing, which is not in the mind, at least not in the egoic mind. Yeah.
Perception or difference from knowledge or knowing, which is not in the mind, at least not in the going mind. Right? Absolutely. Absolutely. And to perceive something, first, to me, perception comes again from experience, right? And to
Yeah. From your
experience
lived.
something, you need to like live it and feel it, right? In order to perceive it. Like you can't stay here.
Frida also mentioned that the tree
All
was
right.
in the middle of the garden, which you kind of already talked about the balance. I don't know if you saw that. Or if you guys were just in sync in the
No,
moment, you should have been like, you must have been. You've been really in sync with the audience today. They've been saying things at the same time as they're coming out of your mouth.
we're connected. We're one,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, so it's interesting that the tree was in the middle of the garden. Well, what about the tree of life, though? What was the difference between the tree of knowledge and the tree of life? Does anyone know about this and want to share?
There are
Because
two
we
different.
hear a lot about the tree of knowledge.
Yeah. But consider this, there are two different perceptions that is happening in the USA right now with this administration. Yes.
There's only
I
one.
feel like we always get pulled into politics. I'm
Everything is
Canadian.
politics.
I'm going to plead the fifth.
And like, even if you think about the whole story of the Garden of Eden, like the fact that there was this quote unquote law that they were not supposed to eat from the tree of knowledge, and they broke the law and they were punished for that. That is politics, right? We
Yeah.
always get That's why we always get pulled into politics, because politics is like how a system works.
I'm curious for those that are in the chat because, yes, they're able to eat from the tree of life. They can't eat from the tree of knowledge. What, in your opinion, do you think that, and this is like the paradox of it, right? Because if God is new, if like the field is neutral, right? If non-duality is neutral, then why would there be at any point an idea that you can't eat from a tree? You know, that in and of itself is saying this is bad. So then the question is, what really happened in the Garden of Eden? You know, like if we truly believe that the field, that God, that whatever you're calling it, the I am is neutral at its core, then how can there be a God that says, don't eat from the tree, don't eat the apple? So what's really happening? Yeah.
Well, if you want to get mystical, we can even say that the real story of the Garden of Eden comes from the first civilization I forgot the name. Remember, we talked about this a while back.
Oh, the creation, like the Garden of Eden story,
Yeah,
Sumerian, I think, was the
the
Sumerian tablets.
Sumerians. Yeah, and apparently, like it was like aliens who were basically
It was reptilians.
reptilians.
That's the first Garden of Eden story, yeah. Is that
That's the
so? It's
first Garden of Eden
actually
story.
more like, in my opinion, it parallels the Gnostic texts. And then afterwards, we created this story where we were shameful and we had to, like, I don't know, put shame on ourselves. So it's interesting because, like, the first ever found written version of the Garden of Eden is more Gnostic than it is canon. It is like we're trapped in an illusion and we finally start realizing and wake up that we're actually, well, it's not like a connection to God, it's an escape from a warlord. I don't know.
But it ties in beautifully to the next thing that I wanted to mention, because in this story of the Sumerians that were kind of living in this garden that was actually controlled by these reptilians, there was one reptilian that actually wanted to save them and make them wake up. And that reptilian was in like Christian mythology, or the story of Genesis, was the snake, which brings us to our next question. So was the snake really evil, or was the snake the initiator, the wisdom, right? Because if we think about it, if how can before they ate from the tree of knowledge and there was this apple that they ate, before that there was no good or evil, or at least they didn't perceive any, they didn't have this duality of good or evil, light or darkness.
But they
So
did because they thought that the tree was evil. Like they thought that they couldn't eat it. Do you know what I mean? Like they maybe didn't believe in good and evil, but they believed in good and bad. Like I can do this, but I can't do that. That's bad.
that's a very good point, actually.
I
You
have a really hard time with with the Genesis version of because it contradicts itself over and over again. Like I see some beauty in it. I do. Like I love that it's like this unity consciousness. Absolutely, totally here for it. How do we connect back to that innocence within ourselves? But then there's so many pieces that I'm like, when you really sit with it, I don't get it.
Yeah. And this is the beauty of like when you start decoding these things and having conversations, you start realizing a lot of nuances, and you're like, okay, I had never
There's
thought
nuance
about
in
this before, but it
everything.
makes sense. Yeah.
Frida's saying she sees it differently. From the beginning, they were in communion and communication eternally with their source. Yes. So do you think then, Frida, that it's them second guessing themselves and that's the fall? Later, they listen to
Later
and
they
began
listen.
communion with something. Yeah. They listen to
I'll take this out.
something external outside of themselves. Human beings have been doing that ever since. Okay. I'm going to stop there with the non duality here, because if you think that we are one mind, then what is outside of that one mind? If you think we all come from the same source, then that statement is telling me you still think there's an evil something, like there's something outside of you that can still control you.
The mind is
So is
split.
it unity or is it split? See, I don't see ego as a bad thing. I see it as an integrative piece. And I think that that's what a lot of
A mechanism.
teachings, yes. I think it's a part of you that you need to see, okay, like the shadow work, shining the light on what you haven't looked at and then integrating that piece of you. It's not, and that for me has been the hardest work, is actually realizing, because I kept like, I've always been like, oh, it's like micro ego deaths and like ego death, ego death, ego death. And that's dissociation. now. Like that, for me, I feel like that's dissociation, because there comes a point in time where if I want to believe in non-duality and everything is one at its core source, and I'm like, it has to be everything, because look at science. The Big Bang happened. It all came from the same energy. So everything has to be from the same source. And that includes ego, unless you think that there's some other God creating ego outside of it that's evil. So then I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is something like paradoxal that's really been like in my head
Mhm.
for many months, where I'm like, I can't. Yeah. So Frida's saying ego doesn't exist. It was made by human beings. So do you read the Gnostic text?
I think she
But
mentioned that she
energy
hadn't read them
cannot be
before.
this is the point. Like, you have to, do you believe in science though? If you believe in science and energy cannot be created or destroyed, and it all comes from the same source, then it's not about miscreating though, because if you now think that it's miscreated, then you still believe in good and bad. You still believe in duality. Like, it's a paradox. I don't know. I'm sitting here as like, how do you center as much as you can in non-duality, which means you can't have a villain. And ego is still a villain in this story. And then
Ego doesn't
also,
exist. It was miscreated.
yes, but the word miscreate, like it's not about, and sin and misalignment and everything. It's all about like coming back to center. It's not about villainizing the sin. It's not about villainizing the miscreation. And I think when we do that, we pull ourselves into duality without realizing it. Can you have a villain, whether it's the serpent or whether it's the ego, and still actually be embodying non-duality? Can you have that?
I think that the ego, again, if we see it from a neutral perspective of like it's not good or bad, it's just a mechanism that allows us and that allowed, you know, Adam and Eve to, for the first time, experience themselves as separate. And I believe that that separation, again, was also needed because if you're not separated from each other, how can you experience anything? How can you experience life? And the whole point of life, I believe, and like the soul's journey is to return back into that unity. But I don't see it as good or bad. It's just something that is that needed to happen that allows us to experience ourselves as well. And the path to awakening is through once we remember, okay, so we have that ego, but we're not associated with the ego. It's just a mechanism. It's just there to allow us to also live in this 3D world. But now that we know what it is and we don't attach ourselves to it, we can like start walking back into
Mm.
that unity consciousness. So Sarah's saying the tripartite tractate speaks about the remembrance of who we came from. It describes the journey of the ego very well. Interesting. We're gonna
I've
make
never,
sure to share that.
yeah, I've never
No,
heard of
me
that.
neither. Me neither. But we'll share that in the show notes so that we all remember. Then
Robin,
Robin says,
yeah, go
I
ahead. I
don't
was
think
going
the
to read it.
ego is a mistake. We're both fully human and fully divine, 100%. Having an ego and soul is the whole existence of our humanity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Could
And
could
that's, I think
couldn't
the
agree more.
problem is like we get into this space where we want to dissociate from ego, but that is, as a human who you are, you're both. I don't know if you like want to resonate with like, and I think the problem is we also call it like ego, we call it like the devil, and we call it like all these bad things within us. When what if you just saw it as like the masculine and the feminine, within you, the soul and the spirit, the spark of God that's within you. And actually it's like that is the union that you're trying to create, is your ego and the divine spark, the consciousness, the I am, and that beautiful divine flow and co-creation. Or to try and villainize this thing, which is the same thing with like the Gnostic texts, which I had a problem with after reading them a couple of times. I was like, holy shit, like if I think we're all one, I can't have a villain. I can't have Yaldabaoth as a villain. And that's a hard thing. But like, think about the law of attraction, right? Like if I need a villain for my identity to exist, then I am calling in the field of possibilities, in the infinite field, in the quantum field, I'm calling in a villain. My unconscious that needs a villain is saying, hey, quantum fields, make me a villain so that I can still exist as who I am. So what if Yaldabaoth is the birth of matter? If Yaldabaoth is the birth of matter.
That's what the Gnostics say, right? That Gilgamesh was the creator of the
Matter.
3D,
Yes.
right? Of
But
matter.
but then we villainize the creator, right? Like the Yaldabaoth is a villain, right? Essentially.
Well, it could be seen as a villain, or it could be seen as someone who's ignorant, or someone or something that's ignorant, right? Not necessarily a villain, but someone who's so ignorant and disconnected from its true source, which makes him or it or whatever it is act in that way. And this is something that, it takes us back to what we've talked so many times. Like, when you see people doing evil acts, can you see past their evil facade and look at their wound? Because their wound is basically them just forgetting their true essence, their connection to God, and their connection to one, to everything, their oneness with everything, right? And that is, again, ignorance.
That takes a lot of shadow work. And I talked about like the realization with me of how Yeshua speaks about forgiveness being the ability to actually look within yourself and what is the little part of you that is possible of that atrocity. Maybe it's like jealousy, whatever. Like, what is the part of me that's capable of that thing? And from that place where you can sit with that part of your ego and actually like hold it and be like, I see you. Like, I see you. That there's a part of me that could feel that isolated, that's separate, that I would do that thing. And then from that place of reconciliation within yourself, because I feel as though there's no true forgiveness until you forgive and like sit with that part of yourself. Then I can look at this person who's committed this atrocity and not judge them just by the worst expression of their soul.
And that is hard work. It's possible, but it's hard work, right?
It's hard work to be like, actually, you are capable of extreme good and horrific evil. You, Juan, me. Like, there is a part of you that is capable. It maybe didn't go down
Yeah.
the road. Maybe it was nurtured more, but there's still a part of you.
And there's probably been times in our lives where someone else have seen us as evil, right? Because at the end of the day, again, it's all about perception. And we might have done something that for us was not even just neutral, and it might have ended up hurting someone else because it triggered a specific wound that they hadn't really looked into or brought awareness into, and then you become the evil one. Coming back to the serpent, I think we can all agree that since we're talking about neutrality, non-duality, the serpent was never evil. I see the serpent just as information, right? The serpent is telling them,
Mm.
like, if you eat from this tree, your eyes will open,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it's not a lie. It's what happened. They ate from the
Yeah.
tree and their eye opened, and that's where they fall into self uh, awareness. They become aware of themselves, and by becoming aware of themselves, they become aware of their separation and of their nakedness, and that's where shame was born,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's really the fall. The fall is this birth of shame.
That's so juicy because the original sin and like any of your sins, any of your misalignments are never the problem. It's how you react to them. It's the shame that you put around them, the guilt that you put around them that snowballs into a cluster fudge. So it's not, and I think that's what shadow work really does. It connects you to that misalignment quicker and quicker, like the trigger, and then you come back. And like before you know it, it's almost simultaneous that you're just like, I'm triggered by this thing. Oh, I'm back in alignment. But yes, that's beautiful because if you look at it that way, then the Garden of Eden truly is the serpent is telling you this is what's going to happen. Here's the information. It's neutral. You go and you do it. And then the voice in your head is like, why the fuck did you do that? And then now you
Mm,
spiral and now you fall. And now you're like, I'm not worthy of this connection. And now you're in,
mm.
instead of like a couple hours of like, man, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And like sitting with it and letting it process through it. Then you're like, oh, wait a second. Like instead of that, now I'm spending weeks, years, generations completely disconnected.
Love that. It's 11:11, and Jackie's saying mic drop on that one. Yeah, yeah. And I always like to share this parallel that I thought about the other, like, a couple of months ago. And like, what if each of us experience our own Garden of Eden, like fall into shame and then walking back into unity from the point or the perspective of a child being born. So when you are in your mother's womb, you are literally in Eden, right? You are in complete harmony, in complete balance, in
Divinely held.
abundance, divinely held. You don't worry. There's no worries. There's no awareness of separation. You're literally not separated from your mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you are born. And that's where the
It's
separation
juicy.
begins. But even as a child, you're still maybe from like 1 to, I don't know, 5 or 4, you're still not aware of separation. You start seeing separation and you probably start experiencing separation in some way, but you're
I
still
think
not
the ego
fully
forms at
aware of it.
7.
Yeah, the ego forms at 7. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there is a time in everyone's lives as kids when you feel shame for the first time. And that is the
Mm,
fall for everyone. The first moment that you feel shame, which is like the main what's the word that I'm looking for? The main sign of separation is shame,
yes. Yeah.
right?
And I
And
feel
there's a
like
moment
shame
in our
is
lives.
it's just telling you, like, again, it's a trigger. It's telling you that there's something that needs to be held, that needs to be seen.
Mm,
I wonder, does anyone, I don't know if it was my upbringing, but I don't think I remember a time before shame as a child. Yolanda's
yeah.
saying exactly. And it says we were born into sin, separation. Yeah. Into
No, it's
like
the world.
misalignment, missing the mark. I think if we can take anything from the Garden of Eden, I think we need to take the lesson that every time you step into sin and every time you step in, like sin as what it's meant to be, which is missing the mark and like a little misalignment with your center, instead of shaming yourself and falling from that divine connection, sit with yourself,
Mm,
hold your, like having the love and compassion to sit with the parts of you that are begging to be seen, because it's not the sin that's the problem. It never was. It's the shame and the spiraling downwards, the fall that has always been the issue, without like wanting to villainize anything, but it's just like your extended disconnection from God, right? Like, or however you want to phrase it. Yolana's saying, I definitely don't remember a time before shame. Guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am wrong. That is the separation. Grace is the new energy of this era. I believe we can give ourselves forgiveness and grace with everything and with others. Yes. Yeah, I think it's like so yeah, the shame thing, like, I grew up with my mom still is, like, the shame parenting, well, maybe it's a Catholic thing, I don't know, it's a generational thing, and I think, like, finally our generation is like, "No, I don't like I've got 4 kids, I don't wanna raise them like that," but I remember distinctly, my daughter was, like, 6 or 7, like, ego had just formed. I think she was probably 7, and she comes home and she doesn't tell me what happened until afterwards, but, like, we're sitting at dinner and I'm like, "What's wrong with the back of your head?" She had, like, literally cut off a huge chunk of her hair, like, just, like, and her hair was long, like, down halfway down her back, and I'm like, "Emery, what did you do?" And she was like, "Well, Bobby was making me feel bad about the fact that I hadn't, like, brushed my hair, and there was, like, a big knot in there," and so she shamed her to the point where she came home, and she gets home and it's, like, tries to brush it out herself, can't brush it out herself, so instead of she's, like, spiraling in shame, instead of just being like, "Mom, can you help me with this thing?" She goes and she cuts her hair off. And now there's a bigger problem.
which
And
will
that
create even more shame.
which will create even more shame. And I think that that's like she's a for anyone who knows human design, she's a 1-3, and I feel like that like unconscious adventurer is definitely like it's easier for her to get spiraled into the shame, into the like, "Oh my god, I made a mistake," because her literal life is meant to have adventure and make mistakes and learn from them quickly. Her life is like shadow work, integration. And then when like it's interesting to witness as a parent where now I'm like trying to even overcorrect in some ways to be like, make the effing mistakes. And okay, like what do we learn from them? Because that's like she's a good example of how we actually how shame works in our real lives. Like this little thing that was like, oh, there's a knot in your head. Somebody could have mentioned it, but now you're red and you're spiraling and you're like, oh my God. And then like they're making you feel like shit. And then you come home and you're like, oh crap, I need to fix this thing. And then you're trying to fix this thing and it doesn't go as you planned. And now you're even more dysregulated if you're looking at nervous system. And now you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And you're so disconnected and you're so dysregulated and unaligned that you're like, let me get the scissors and then you chop it off. And now you've created this crazy hair that everybody's going to be like, what'd you do to your hair? So now you've created this huge thing out of nothing, what could have been neutral. So I think when we talk about neutrality and we talk about non-duality, I think we need to understand that I'm not telling you to look at the things that are happening out there and be like, that's neutral. That's a very hard place to get to. I'm not even really there yet. But your life, your moment, the moment where somebody says there's a freaking knot in your hair is neutral until you assign it that meaning of shame and guilt and, oh my God, how could I? And then that's where you spiral off. Now you're in disconnection instead of coming back to alignment. And now the rest of your day and the weeks following maybe it's being controlled by this disconnection, by this dysregulation in your nervous system.
Yeah. You know what's coming up for me? Like the whole concept of shame, which is basically what we said before. Like the fall is the birth of shame, but also shame is tied to identity. And when we identify ourselves with a specific identity, anything that threatens that identity gonna produce shame, is gonna give us shame, right? So where does shame come from? Why? Why do we feel shame, and why is it always so pushed into us? And why do it threatens our identity? And is our identity what creates separation?
I would say probably, yeah, your identity is what creates the separation. But also, you have to have your
But do we
identity
need to
in
have an
this
identity?
in duality. I think the problem is we're trying to like escape duality. Can you escape duality here? And
Mm.
so, yeah, it's interesting because I don't. Where did shame come from? Where does it? Yeah, where is the original process?
I
It's
think it's
like
the
from
moment you form your identity. The moment you form your identity, that's also the moment that shame is born. Because basically, if let me think about it, shame is really this fear of being judged, I guess, right? Because your daughter was like, she was really panicking about it because she had been judged or she had been criticized, right? So it officially puts you into a state of mega separation, because if someone is judging you or criticizing you or pointing at you, it means that you literally are separate from each other, right?
yeah,
So it's that fear of being judged, of feeling separate, that creates
hmm
shame.
yeah,
Because if
yeah,
you weren't afraid of that, because if you remembered, actually, I am you, you are me, like I am everything,
yes.
then nothing can judge you or nothing can criticize you, because it would be like criticizing itself.
Yeah, but I think the problem is, the two commandments that Yeshua speaks of. The second one, love thy neighbor. And here's the problem with love thy neighbor is that we are expecting our neighbors to love us like we're capable of loving ourselves. And they're not doing the work to love themselves. So they're actually a lot of them that are loving us exactly as they can love us because that's how they love themselves. But yes, we had
I
Jennifer
love,
asking,
I love what they're.
yeah, there's a lot happening about the body as the temple. We have Jennifer asking, isn't shame put on us by others wanting to establish dominance and control? I mean, isn't it put on us? I
I
think
think
that
that once
go
it's
ahead.
understood, like once we understand the power that shame creates, which is basically create even more separation. Yes, it can create more control over us, right?
Yes,
So I agree
Yolanda's
with that.
that's right. Yolanda's saying we on some level consent to it. We do. And that is
Yes.
unconscious consent. It really is. But now you're aware of it. So I think we like we did in the Jung and Jesus, we talked about how we have to bring things to our awareness before we change them. So now you can change it. But yes, I think the idea that somebody isn't shame put on us to create dominance and control, that is you unconsciously, you're saying I have handed my authority over. And you might not see it that way, but you unconsciously, somewhere inside of you, believe that you still need an authority outside of yourself to think that that statement is correct. Because once you can establish your own inner authority and realize that, like, from the place that we are all one, you do have energetic consent over all of these things. The problem is, like, to me, it all comes back to shadow work. Can you look at the pieces of yourself, like what we're talking about right now, that are unconsciously consenting to this? Because there is like if you believe that in some capacity, there's a part of you that's still handing your authority over to someone else because you think that it is possible for somebody to have dominance over you. It is not possible. And I say that because I
Nick,
feel like my entire life has been like initiations of figuring out how to not give a fuck.
so you think that basically what happened with Adam and Eve is that, and most specifically Eve gave her authority
To Adam,
to Adam.
I feel, yeah, because she did the thing. And then after the fact, you have this like God coming in being like, how dare you? Here are and then, well, it's also kind of like, it's a hard one because here's the problem that I have with Genesis is that up until the consequence point is a different author. So the consequences that God lays out is a different author. It's not the same writer. So I have a hard time like integrating those two halves of the Garden of Eden story Because for me, that was like, I was reading it, I could feel the distortion. As somebody who's clairsentient, I felt it. And I was like, what just happened here? Like, we went from like, here's your apple to like, you're going to have painful births for the rest of your life, and and men are gonna have to like slave over the earth. And I'm like, what is happening? So, but I do think like there was Adam doesn't want to take radical responsibility for him eating the fruit. And now he's like, oh, well, it was Eve. She gave me the apple. And Eve's like unconsciously consenting to taking the blame for it. But I think at the end of the day, there's always co-creation, that there can't be one
Yeah.
good and one bad. It is unconscious and conscious wounds together in relation that create events.
100%. And I also really believe, and by the way, happy International Women's Day to all the beautiful ladies that have joined us today. We need more women in power, honestly. I truly
Mm.
believe the world would be such a different place. But, anyways, I feel that somehow Eve knew because Yolanda is saying she ate even when told not to,
But who told
right?
her not
But
to?
I
But who
feel,
told her it was wrong? You know what I mean? Like if everything's neutral and you think it's all information, who and it's all you're all in divine union. There's no separation from God in the Garden of Eden, right? Like, so who told you not to do the thing which created the shame when you still did the thing? At what
and to
point?
me, women represent wisdom, and that spark of wisdom inside of Eve was maybe it wasn't even the snake. Maybe it was her own wisdom that told her you need to eat to know, to
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
Yeah, Robin is saying maybe she listened to her inner authority.
I do
Exactly.
think that that's the case. And I think like when you look at the different traditions, they talk about like the feminine and the masculine awakening, the feminine being through the body. And I mean, Eve is a beautiful representation of that. She needed to feel it in her body.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if we go back to what we said before, like the serpent was not deceiving Eve. The serpent was just information. You do this,
Yeah,
and
this is what's going to happen.
and then you'll see. And then she knew, like she knew. It's not that she was disobedient. She just knew that that was how it's supposed to be. She needed to experience that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that. My life is like constant in your face initiations. I was talking to a friend a couple days ago and I was like, why did I choose the life in which I get a knowing and then within days I have to experience it in my body? Why did I choose this? So, yeah.
Right. So that's very interesting. Yeah, such interesting character, Eve. Very misunderstood.
Yeah. And in some of the Gnostic texts, Eve is Sophia.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's what I was saying. Like in the Gnostic text, like Sophia also wanted to experience herself, right? That's why she created
Mm,
Beelzebub on her own, right?
hmm
And then she realized that it was an error, and that's how she put like the divine spark of wisdom in all of us. So maybe that was literally Sophia waking up in Eve, telling her you need to eat in order to experience, in order to be, in order to exist, in order this, so that you can all come back to source, right?
hmm
So
hmm
what was the fall in the end? Like what was really the fall? It's just like we can
It's
stay
this
talking about this for hours,
forever.
right?
I think the fall is the shame spiral that where we like
The
now
shame spiral.
we feel I mean, and you even see it because like the first thing they do is they feel shame and they grab a leaf and they cover themselves. So it's
Mm,
literally represented in, and you could also look at it. I think there's like another layer of where we start grabbing things outside of ourselves to feel whole. So you're grabbing. I feel like the leaf was the first representation of like capitalism.
so interesting. Probably, yeah, 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 yeah. And you know what? I think we talked about this a while back, but I haven't read the Quran, and I'm feeling called to read it and study it, and like find what parallels can I find between Quran and the Bible. But I
There's a
heard that
lot.
they also have the Garden of Eden, but
They do.
in the Quran, Adam and Eve repent, and God forgives them, and they're actually
hmm
they never fall.
They never fall. Yeah. And I think that's beautiful. And this is like the where I'm at in my level of awareness is like there is we're never going to sit here and know the absolute truth. The only absolute truth that
Mm,
I think that we're capable of knowing is that we come from the same energy and we return to that same energy. You know, whether you remember it in this physical body or you remember it when your physical body dissolves and you're now one. And so
Embrace
in
the
that
mystery.
I feel like the juicy part of living is like finding the paradox and the nuance and finding like the little. I remember when I started actually like I wasn't deconstructing, but I remember the first video that I posted like back in June. I called it the spiral study. And I was literally reading like all of these different sacred texts that weren't the Bible. And I was looking for breadcrumbs of God, like of the divine across traditions and timelines. Like that was my goal, is to like show me where you are in everything. And so I went into deconstruction, not thinking of it as deconstruction, but thinking of it as show me the little piece of you that lives in every little thing that I touch. And that made an epic difference for me because I was never picking myself back together afterwards. I was always looking for pieces of myself along the way. But I remember somebody being like, oh, like you're not going to believe in God at the end of this because you're deconstructing. You're going to realize everything was fake and blah, blah, blah. But like, everything is fake. Like, I don't even know my own life. Like, I look back at situations 10 years ago now, and I'm like, holy shit, how did I not see this huge part of this equation that now I'm so aware of? Like, I don't even know myself. How can I think that this book has all of the answers to our entire shit?
So
I don't know
true.
about you guys in the chat, but I feel like I'm constantly meeting new pieces of myself every single day. Embrace the
Preach, says
mystery.
Yolanda.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that the best way to wrap this up is okay, so if Eden is really a state of consciousness, if the fall was just like energetic and
Hmm.
the birth of shame, which shame, again, shame is a frequency, right? It's
Yeah.
energetically speaking, it's a frequency. So the return is also energetic, it's also about a frequency. So how can we on a day to day choose to live in Eden consciousness?
Hear me out. Shame. Don't quote me on this because it's been a while since I picked up the book of Revelation, but shame births the first sin of pride, right? Because you're ashamed and you don't want to be wrong. So now you have pride and now you've created an ego. You've created this mechanism that protects the identity that you're afraid of being wrong about. Okay. And don't quote me. I've done like a study where I put them all in, but I'm pretty sure that the first seal represents pride. I could look it up
And
because I have it.
Revelation.
Yeah.
Go look it up. Go look it up.
Like, we need to know.
But
Mm,
basically, yeah, well, you look it up, returning to the Garden of Eden, to the garden that we all carry inside of us, is just this remembrance of unity, right? And of choosing love when we want to hate, or choosing presence when we want to escape, or choosing connection when we're feeling disconnected, or feeling compassion when we want to fight, right? I think that that's
mhm.
really how we choose to live in Eden consciousness or unity consciousness. And I truly believe that
Mm,
the whole story of Genesis, I'm probably going to have to like deep dive into this a little bit more, but I feel like the whole story of Genesis tells us the fall of into duality, into
mhm,
honest, and also into self awareness,
mhm.
but also the return into oneness.
Yeah, yes, Yolanda, I have the white horse conquest pride, the fear of being wrong, of needing to control God's plan, and it blocks your trust and surrender, but it can be
I love what Sarah says
transmuted
as well.
into humility and alignment. And that's what I feel like transmutes it is humility. And somatic
I love
practices.
what Sarah's saying. Let me see if I can like pull this out again. That the way that she returns to Eden is through somatic practices where we meet things like shame with love and allow that energy within us to move, helping us remember our bliss. That's how I restore Eden in myself as often as I can. Beautiful. Which is
Yeah.
also a bit of like shadow work, no?
Yeah. I mean, that's what we do in Threshold too, is a lot of that. And especially you and Jesus, we drilled that in.
Yeah. Did you
Um,
find it?
yeah, it was the seal, the first seal is the white horse, like Yolanda said, which to me was
Okay.
the sin it reveals is pride. What it really is a fear of being wrong. This is just like my reflections of needing to control God's plan. And it blocks a layer of trust, the trust in the divine, and it can be transmuted through humility into alignment, which I really
Beautiful.
do think that that is the case. Like it's humility. Shocking. Yeshua did not even once tell us to be humble, but it is humility that is the cure to shame. Being okay with sinning, being
Mm,
humble about it, being like, oh yeah, I fucked up, okay, let's come back. What did that fuck up
being
actually try to
okay,
tell me?
being okay with the ego as well,
Yeah. Yolanda wants a
right? Not
future
feeling
revelation
shame about the
study.
ego.
Yes, I literally have, I'm not even shitting you, 300 pages of notes on the book of Revelation. I was totally obsessed. It was
Robin is
like
saying
my favorite.
the difference
Mm,
between humility and humiliation. Humility is about humbleness, right? I would
us
say,
being
like,
humble, yes.
and humiliation is like
Mm,
shaming others.
interesting. Interesting. I
Is there a
have to
better
sit with the
word instead
ling.
of humility?
I mean, obviously, the word humility is triggering because we have the word humiliation, but isn't the word humiliation just the inability to be humble? So you're trying to project your shame on someone else? So,
Yeah,
yeah. So it would be like the best word probably be humble, but hum is the root word of human too.
love
Hmm.
that.
Yep,
Love
we're
that. Love
very
that.
bad at the humility. Thank you. Today's my
Happy
73rd
birthday,
birthday.
Susel.
Happy birthday.
Amazing. Thanks for being here on your birthday. That's beautiful. Yeah. What a lovely gift to have these spaces to just have conversations about these topics, right? Beautiful topics. Love that. Beautiful. Awesome. Well, I think this is the perfect moment to wrap up. If you guys, if you have any other question or anything you want to share, any insight, anything that we probably maybe didn't mention, you can just drop it and then we'll talk about it. In the meantime, I do want to share this with you guys and anyone who's watching the replay or listening on Spotify. A while back, Jesse and I created this beautiful challenge that is called the Return to Eden Challenge.
Mm,
And it's a 21-day challenge where we walk you day by day through different activities like audio drops, embodiment practices, somatic practices, visualizations that take you from that state of shame, the birth of shame, back into oneness. And it's a beautiful journey. A lot of people in the audience, I'm sure that they've done it already because it used to be a part of Threshold. Now this is like a thing that you can get on your own and you can do it at your own pace. Sure. Well, thank you so much, everyone. It was a beautiful conversation. Thanks for your participation, for your insights, for your input. We'll be doing more of these live conversations. And as we said before, they're going to go into Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube if you want to watch the replay. Again, if you're interested in joining the Return to Eden Challenge, I shared the link in the chat if you're interested in joining the challenge. It's a beautiful 21-day challenge. And honestly, it's going to open so much for you if you decide to go on that journey. And Jesse and I will be there to answer any questions. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
maybe next time we'll do the book of Revelation.
Maybe. I have a lot of notes on that. I need to go through my notes, but I have a lot of notes on that. Yeah.
I love it's such a
Beautiful.
juicy, it's layered. Everything's layered. I'm telling you, if you pick up the Bible, you should be able, like, ask yourself, ask your higher self, ask the field, ask God, show me something I haven't seen before. Because I swear
Yeah.
there are infinite perceptions of the same
Yeah.
words.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful, guys. Well, have a wonderful Sunday. Happy Women's Day again. I'm actually going to go do
Happy
my
Women's
post
Day.
about Women's Day. I hope you're all going to love it and like it and share it.
I will.
It's really cool. Shalom, shalom, Yolanda. Bye bye.
Bye,
Speak soon.
everyone.